Hi, my name is Bart van der Verst, and I'm a partner at Element 61. Today, I want to take you through how a media data platform can drive real-time insights and analytics using Spark. The media landscape is in a continuous change. If we look through the media landscape, we currently see that it's in its biggest transformations, with quite some market changes putting some drastic challenges on the media and entertainment industry. First, we see, I think, the rise of tech giants. The Googles and the Facebooks are putting traditional publishers under stress as they're bringing full digitized platforms and as such kind of revolutionize how we consume news and media. Secondly, with everything happening around GDPR and tracking, we are looking to an era where anonymous tracking and third-party cookies might completely change in a couple of months and years, with only recently the announcement from Google that some of the third-party cookie tracking will soon disappear. Additionally, on top of that, all of the traditional publishers are going through a digital transformation. The digital transformations where a lot of old traditional publishers have been printing newspapers and magazines for quite some time and have to shift kind of this content material to a digital platform and kind of deliver the same experience, the same user engagement, and the same platform experience in a cross-platform digital and printing setup. Finally, on top of that, we see that users are looking for personalization. And with that source of personalizations, the media landscape really has to offer the right content at the right time and needs to make sure that basically they engage the users similarly as we are all engaged in some of the social media channels that we interact with daily. The good thing is that data is flooding in the media landscape. And if there's one thing plenty in terms of data, in terms of volume in the media, we see that it's data not only happening through the online behavioral clickstream data, where we can basically see who is reading which content, who is consuming which page views, but we can similarly see the digital subscription data about how people are subscribing to their newspapers, how they are consuming them, how they're basically switching between the traditional paper newspapers and the digital ones. And we can all track that using the data volumes available in the online tracking world. Next to online tracking of reading behavior, there's a whole flood of data that a media agency, but also a publisher can use in terms of programmatic advertising and marketing. With every single impression on a website, multiple data flows are happening between the buyers, the advertisers, and the sellers, the publishers, in who to offer which impression and who to offer which clicks. The biggest challenge for a media agency or a media publisher in this changing media landscape is how to turn this data floods and data volumes into some true value streams. Media companies need a data and a digital turnaround to tackle and really embrace on the challenges and the market change that we see happening and we just discussed, as well as to embark on the potential that the data floods can offer. Media companies really need to tackle not the small volumes that they were used to when they were in the printing business and when they were handling subscription data, which weren't regularly changing, but they really need to embrace the huge data volumes and see the light through the data volumes in terms of who's interested in what, who should be converted to the next product or magazine, or when to bring which article to which news reader. Secondly, they need to change their mindsets from using data for purely a reporting purpose to truly using data for data-driven media services. More than ever, a data team at a media company needs to be a value-driving organization, which does a lot more than creating just reportings to be consulted and be used by the internal business. It needs to be a team which by itself tries to create products and tries to inherit those products and absorbs them as part of the digital platform and as part of the digital interface. As such, a lot of the organizations and a lot of media companies needs to go from a classical BI setup to what we call a modern data platform. A platform where real-time data, batch data, small and big volumes can be used not only for reporting, but similarly also for machine learning and AI. 2 years ago, we supported, as Element 61, the Roelachta Media Group in this challenge and this transformation. Roelachta Media Group is a leading Belgian multimedia group who is market leader in the Belgian market in the field of magazines, local media, and business television. It's been in existence since 1954 and is truly a landmark in the Belgian media landscape when it comes to, let's say, day-to-day newspapers, when it comes to day-to-day magazines. It employs over 1,300 employees and does a significant revenue ranging close to 300 million euros in revenue. With its heritage, Roelachta Media Group had a similar challenge as we described in the last couple of minutes. It had a very strong business on traditional newspaper and magazine selling, a lot still happening in the print business, but it was also embarking on the opportunity of digitization and personalizations. I really wanted to take that opportunity. And as Element 61, we are a consultancy company helping organizations today in that market. And as a Microsoft and Databricks partner, we were a perfect fit for Roelachta to basically help them step by step in this journey. The principal focus that Roelachta put in terms of their media data platform was a vision focused on using its own data. Rather than using in the publisher media market the data that a Google offers in its tooling or a Facebook offers in its tooling, Roelachta really wanted to make sure that it captures its own data and it really uses its data to its own value streams by making it available for content recommendations, by making it available back to the user in terms of smart services, but similarly by making it available back to the editor teams for making and writing the best content at the possible time for the right magazine or the right newspaper. The vision of Roelachta was to accelerate with first-party data and do that enterprise right, both for internal customers as well as external customers. Roelachta built its data strategy around 4 key pillars, of which a data platform, as you see here on the left, on the bottom, sorry, is one of its principal components. Next to its data analytical platform, on which we'll talk about in the remaining of this session, you have to know that a data platform successful for a media company also needs to tackle into account some other aspects. One of them is on the left side, the Roelachta account. Roelachta introduced a single sign-on, which allows across all its brands to really capture its cross-site behavior and to really have the ability to identify, similarly as we know from some of the other big players in the market, who is using which product, which magazine, which newspaper, in which fashion, at which point in time. Using the single sign-on, they had simplified their way of having vertical logins, and they now had access by having perspective in understanding what Bart as a reader consumes on different magazines and on different platforms. Another key success factor in their data strategy was on top the customer data platform. The customer data platform is the platform that they engaged in to really track the online behavior. Not being dependent on Google Analytics or any other tech market, they use their own customer data platform using a software in the market to basically track using listeners, the tracking behavior across each of the magazines, and to use smart triggers to basically put some customer journeys into action, which for example means that if you have been doing this on the site, that a couple of seconds later, another trigger with, for example, a content recommendation generated in the data analytics platform can be shown. The final pillar on the right side was the match and merge algorithms. Using the historical data of the last 70 years of data that Roelachta has a lot in the offline market, you can imagine that not all the information was perfectly stitched together. Using a match and merge, they were able to basically stitch together some customer information and to use that cross-brand silos and engage them into one common customer profile. Finally, and foremost, the data analytics platform is its core analytics engine. It's there where any of the custom analytics is happening, including some of the machine learning algorithms we'll discuss today, as well as some reporting use case. The data analytics platform really serves as the foundation of Roelachta's reporting, real-time personalization, and insight services. It basically translates touch points, which are here shown on top, from e-commerce, from apps, from websites, but similarly as well from reader interactions, such as, for example, events that are hosted online or virtual, and content center interactions to the data platform. Within the data platform, the customer data platform, the master data management for the match and merging, and the data analytics platform really work together. And basically all together, they then allow for communications. Communications of targeting which subscriber to reach with which kind of email or which kind of content recommendations, but similarly also who to reach on Facebook, who to target using personalization image, and who to put into an advertising audience fit for the advertisers. Quickly, we noted in the exercise that the available BI stack couldn't really deliver on the requirements which were put forward. The traditional BI stack consisted of an Oracle data warehouse with some SAP layers of BI around it, including SAP data services, but also including SAP business objects. Naturally, in the modern requirements, we needed to have one analytical data hub, which was able to really handle the big volumes of data, which range in around 2.5 terabytes of data every month. Not only did we have to handle the huge volumes, Roularte also needed a platform which was able to really deliver high performance, because it had to ingest, of course, the 20 million transactions per day, but there was really a true real-time dependency. If somebody is reading an article, we need to be able to, on the spot, tell them what is the next article they should read. And as such, it was important that that real-time interaction of the data platform was able to give those real-time content recommendations. Another requirement was the ability to work with structured and unstructured data. More than ever, in media landscape, not all the data is perfectly structured. We have text, and as such, NLP algorithms reading the unstructured text data need to be able to put the summary out of each content, as well as a summary out of each comment, for example, given on the newspaper websites. Naturally, this all includes advanced scoring, modeling, and AI capabilities, which the data scientists at Roularte Media Group, of course, need to be fully able to work with and to cope with. Finally, we don't only want to run machine learning, but also, of course, want to do dashboarding. So all of that huge data sets, those real-time data sets, and those machine learning algorithms all had to be reflected in dashboards, which can then be flexibly shared to different departments in the organization. Therefore, we built a modern data platform using Azure and Databricks. In the approach that we have taken, as I will go step by step through this slide in just a bit, we have used all the best practices that were available within the Azure and the Databricks environment, including the Delta Lake framework, commonly known and a lot of discussed, of course, in this event. Using the PaaS services that were available in Microsoft, we're able to bring the first use cases live in less than 6 months. In those 6 months, we set up the platform, put right the security, put in place the data capturing, cleaned the data, and delivered the first use cases back to the business teams. From there, we really built iteratively and very use case driven, where we don't have the mindset of taking all the data in the data platform, but really have the mindset of focusing on what is the data that we need to deliver on the use cases which lay ahead of us. To really drive the ROI and the business visibility, we first were focused on some reporting use cases, and now step by step, we are adding some of those machine learning services as I just described. When we go through the platform, we can see that on the left side, we have 3 types of data. We have an event stream, which is basically website and app scripts, which generate dedicated events using an Azure Function API endpoint, and where specifically, for example, some very specific events, such as a click on the button or such as something very specifically on the website, can be shared and pushed to an Azure Event Hub. Next to the specific scripts, there is the BlueConic firehose, BlueConic acting as a CDP, a customer data platform, which next to tracking the data for its own purposes, shares in real time all of the data through an Azure Event Hub. Once in the Azure Event Hub, we basically do a real-time ingestion into a Delta table using the Azure Databricks interface, which then runs under the hood, of course, on an Azure Data Lake generation 2. Once in the data lake in the bronze layer, the raw zone layer, we have a real-time feed, which basically first cleans the data to a silver layer as a PII-free zone, then brings the data to a gold zone for clean and basically ready to go information. And from there, the information can go or to a batch flow, which then integrates with Snowflake for any of, let's say, the batch reporting, self-service analytics, and insights. But also to the bottom goes to, for example, Power BI, where some real-time reports are being put up to date in real time using the Power BI SDK for real-time data pushing. Next to this real-time data feed, the feed naturally also takes into account some Roularta Media Group on-premise data, which we integrated to the platform using a data factory pipeline, which takes data not only from the SQL servers, but also from the Oracle systems that are available there today, and including everything in terms of subscription data, and including, for example, some of the orders and deliveries of the physical papers. And next to the batch data, we also have some API calls to do. Some external data sets of tools that Roularta Media Group is using, including a lot of advertising tools such as Moat, Google, Facebook, DV360, Clevercast, and for example, some external data sets on weather. With all of that data available in every stage of the layer, including bronze, silver, and gold, the data lake is truly the foundation for Azure consumers who are using Power BI or who want to, for example, use Python, NER, or Scala, and use that as an advanced analytic interface using Databricks. The data scientists can directly connect to the gold layer and access clean PII-free data, and from there develop any of the machine learning algorithms that they deem fit. For all of the core reporting happening in batch, Snowflake is supporting the data lake setup for any of, let's say, the self-service capabilities. Users can upload and insert additional data to the data model and can really work there with what we call a copper layer or self-service layer to make data available not only to Power BI, but certainly still to Excel, to Webby, and for example, to any of the other tools that they deem fit. The core element of this setup is that we wanted to do a first time right. And we use Delta Lake truly end-to-end from the beginning. The platform started in 2019 Q3, just a couple of weeks after the Delta framework was basically put into general availability in Q2 2019. The Delta Lake is really used across all of the layers in the data lake, from raw to silver to gold. It's there where basically in real time, a cluster is cleaning the data and is all put in and using Delta tables on Azure storage layer. Similarly, the Delta Lake is a very important element as a cornerstone, basically, of the GDPR solution put into place. Using Delta, we can basically anonymize all of the data and keep the combination of the hash as well as the original data in a separate Delta table, where if needed, we can delete data and even persist the deletes so that the GDPR hashing is really not reversible for any of the users. Tangible results quickly was the cornerstone of success in this project. As I mentioned, in less than 6 months, we started by bringing up some real-time dashboards. And one of the first ones that we delivered was the editorial dashboards that you see here in the mockup in the screenshot. This dashboard serves real-time insights of what is happening across all of the sites at Roularta in a simplified single-pane view supported by Power BI. You might wonder, does it not do the same as Google Analytics? But what is here available is a lot more information than what is available there. We also, for example, not only track one site, but all sites at the same time. But certainly, for example, do we track some very specific user parameters, such as, for example, what is the type of user that is actually reading the article? And for example, is the article specifically consumed by readers which we recommended them, or readers, for example, that are just coming in from different channels? Using the flexibility of modifying this dashboard with any of the data that is available in the data lake really gives now the editorial team together with the data team, of course, the ability to make specific focus points, and as such to visualize some of the information that was dispersed before in the organizational setup. Another dashboard which was a low-hanging fruit to enable was the newsletter dashboard. Since many years, Rolachta was using newsletters, of course, but given the volume of data that a newsletter generates, being all the emails that are sent, who has opened, who has clicked, to all of the millions emails of sent daily, they were never really able in the traditional BI platform to really load all of that data in and analyze what is the open rate, how are people consuming the newsletters, and how is somebody who had a certain behavior last week now consuming the newsletters this week. Using a newsletter dashboard, we really try to optimize marketing flows by knowing who's reading which newsletter when, and as such, at which point in time it makes most sense to actually send him that trigger to actually consume the content shared in the newsletter. The newsletter dashboard is now one of those dashboards which is regularly refreshed on a daily basis to give insights in what the newsletters have been doing, what their performance is, and how we can actually send the right amount of newsletters to the right amount of users at the right point in time. Next to reporting use cases, one of the machine learning driven use cases that we started up only a couple of months ago was the use case of predictive article quality. As a news writer, it's very tough to really understand why my one article does well versus my other article doesn't. And as such, the predictive article quality score tries to give a predictive element of how the article will be good at, for example, creating traffic, creating engagement, or creating conversion. What we have done in this use case, if we really started to work bottom up, and using the data of every article in the past, we have calculated a couple of KPIs, I think in total around 100, in 3 areas. The first area was to calculate for every article how much traffic an article is bringing to the website by basically using the number of page views, the number of pages in the last 7 days, the number of pages that are happening on average on a longer time frame, etc., which are all reflected into how an article is able to drive traffic. A second bucket of KPIs that we calculated for all of the articles was the engagement, or how an article is really good at bringing good engagement. By, for example, taking a look at the average attention time, but similarly looking to, for example, the click-through rate. If you read this article, you're likely to stick on and read another one. A third bucket of KPIs was then the conversion score. How good is this article really in driving conversions for Rolachta, in using and creating subscribers, which after reading this article, for example, really try to convert to a subscription or to a trial element. And what we've done is we've taken the insights and KPIs from all of the past articles to now use a predictive article quality score, where based on the text of an article, we can predict how this article is likely to do in terms of traffic, in terms of driving engagement, and in terms of conversion score. And this proof of concept, which was initiated, proven to really be as a tangible case, giving a lot of insight to a news writer in why some articles do better. And by just making some modifications, we can, for example, increase the traffic score, or for example, increase the engagement score. And if you would want to know more, I really would encourage you to rewatch the specific data and AI session that we have as part of this conference, which passed this morning, and which is building an ML tool to predict article quality scoring, as presented by my colleague Ivana. The quality scores itself, next to the predictive elements, are really used as a self-service insight cockpit. And what the editors can do is they can really drive and analyze the article quality of all of the current articles to analyze and understand a bit how the content based currently on the site is helping in driving certain conversions and where, in which area, for example, traffic or, for example, conversion, we need to write and we need to have some more articles into space. I think the good thing is that the best is yet to come. Within the data platform currently put into place, all supported with the Microsoft Azure and the Databricks setup, Brulachta is now truly capable of tackling further use cases. One of the use cases which is on the plate is further enhancing the content classification for driving the traffic, engagement, and conversion algorithms. Another element related to it is the fact that Brulachta wants to use the content tagging using the NLP analysis that we're using for content classifications, also for helping the advertising market and having a flexible and more open targeting product for contextual tagging in the advertising market. Other use cases like customer segmentation and customer profiling are naturally also on the plate, as well as a various set of dashboards using the same information now for publishers or orienting it more, for example, to the marketeers available at Brulachta. An ultimate achievement or an ultimate goal is, of course, to use all of this artificial intelligence setup in terms of what is driving traffic and what is driving conversion, to determine and to put into place a fully dynamic paywall, which could determine at which article for which user we want to put a paywall into place to, for example, ask him first to register, or, for example, ask him first to subscribe, for example, for a paid product. Additionally, Brulachta is looking into newsfeed curation by, for example, then also helping the newsfeed stream and driving and understanding what content is having certain potential and what behavior, for example, in users is having which potential in terms of driving user conversion. The summary, I think, of all of this is that Brulachta has a media data platform which is capable to scale, using Databricks, using the Spark technology, Delta Lake, but also using, for example, Koalas and MLflow. Brulachta is fully capable of now using all of the data that they have available to drive its use cases. Some of these use cases might be in the short term, and some of them might be in the long term. But I think the core conclusion is that Brulachta succeeded in step-by-step trying to take the data volumes in the media landscape as an opportunity rather than a threat, and is now fully ready to really embark in leveraging insights and analytics from its media data platform. Thanks a lot for sharing and staying with me. And of course, I remain available now in the Q&A for any questions that you might still have.